Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Happy Monday, everybody. Turn that frown upside down, everybody. Hey, we're through the preseason. How's everybody doing? Good, Callow?
Through the preseason with no Terry deal. I don't think anyone saw that coming. That's,
No.
I think day to day, yes, but now
Yeah.
totality, no one saw that coming.
I'd like to go back to what date was it? April or something? Well, I'm not worried about this. This is like, I have no
Don't
concerns
worry
about this
about it.
whatsoever. I have never seen anything like this one. This one's a new one to me. So we'll see what happens this week, I guess. They got he is under contract. They got the more pressing issues of what do they do with the rest of the roster over the next 24 to 48 hours. So I think that's going to somewhat take priority. We'll see what happens with Terry after that. I got to tell you, like the look on his face didn't play very well, throughout the weekend. We're on the broadcast, so we didn't make a big deal of it. And what are we going to do? But, um, like, listen, like we use the word optics all the time. He didn't look happy. He's just like he's sitting there. He doesn't look happy. At least, like I was like, at least he's there. It's he wasn't there Monday night. At least he's there. He got the memo. Show up. So I don't know what to make of it anymore, and I'm hoping it just gets done sooner rather than later, and then everybody can say their piece about whatever the result is, and we just get into the season because I just can't believe this has lingered this long.
Yeah, I would say this. Terry was in a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario because he obviously wasn't there last Monday. That became a storyline. Everyone talked about it. But then he was there Saturday. But you have to unpack what was on the sidelines in terms of he was sitting by himself. I said to you for the show's emo Terry, like hood up, didn't look like he really wanted to be there. Like the parents had forced him to, come out for dinner when he didn't want to eat, essentially.
Yeah.
Like you still have to unpack the optics there because I once again, I think like people were going to criticize him either way. That was just not a good look. That's what I'll just say on the surface of all of it, even though I don't know how much Terry was actually hanging out with people on the sidelines, but the visuals were just not good on Saturday.
No, they really weren't. And I think like I think the oddest part about the whole thing, I just keep going back to the beginning of why I was never worried about it was I know he wants to be here and I know they want him here. And I think that's the most surprising part of the whole thing that we're sitting here right now, because that's in most cases, some guys are, as Mike Tomlin puts it, hostages, but like, I don't think that was really the case here with him. Now, how does he feel about everything now? I don't know. I mean, he's sitting there sulking on the sideline. It doesn't look, it really doesn't look great. If they, hopefully something gets rectified soon. I don't think I think he'd be foolish to believe like all of a sudden out of the blue, they're going to buckle and give him whatever it is he's asking for. I think he's probably resigned to the fact that that's not going to happen. But I hope there's a resolution that can, turn that frown upside down, guys, because we're 13 days away and 13 days away from a season that starts with 2 games in 5 days. And one of them's on the road. So there's like no practice in between. Like this should have been settled a few weeks ago, let alone a couple months ago. But here we are, and hopefully it gets done soon, one way or the other. And I'll be very interested to see when it does get settled what he says. We got to take his temperature because a lot of people are going to ask, when we've seen you, you don't look happy. So, we'll have to see what happens here.
Yeah. And I mean, once again, this does just get added to the pile of things. If they come up to an extension, it'll all be water under the bridge, little moments that we will not remember, essentially, in a month or two. But now when you're just trying to unpack it, hour to hour, day to day, not a great look overall. And yeah, he's going to be asked about it because it was very clear he was not happy on Saturday.
Yeah. And if, honestly, like, okay, so let's say they get it settled one way or the other. He's playing out the last year of his contract. He does get an extension that he, signs either happily or begrudgingly, whatever the result is. And he does it. And then they start slow anyway. The questions at his locker are going to be about his situation as to why this happened. But fair or not, like that's what's going to end up happening here. So that's the corner he's boxed himself into. And so we'll just have to, see how it plays out. I'd rather be an optimist about this. And I'm going to talk about this in a little bit. Do we just kind of turn the page? Because it wasn't pretty, like on the field through the first 3 preseason games, including the last one. The last one was, again, very few of the starters or very, very few of the players that would play, we believe, a prominent role. Like Jordan Magee played a little bit. Brandon Coleman did play a little bit. I'll get into that. Luke McCaffrey was, as I kind of told you up front, they profiled him, I think purposefully. I think they wanted to give him some opportunities. Ben Sinnott played a little bit. That's about it. I mean, there were not many players that were expecting to play prominent roles that were part of this, but like I never care about the scores or anything like that in the preseason. It's just really how they play. And really, for the second time in 3 games, the 2 where the starters barely didn't play at all, like they really didn't look great, So like, I think there's questions about depth. The turnovers were terrible. Like they're really on the wrong side of that. The penalties continue to occur. Dan Quinn's openly talked about he didn't like the tackling of the first couple of games. I'm not sure it was great again. The Ravens walk out there, have an 8-minute drive against them. I mean, like I want to wipe the slate clean and go, this doesn't matter. And if they start 5-1, no one's going to remember that they stunk in the preseason, that their depth players got railroaded off the field. But I'm hoping that's what happens, because once again, like I felt like maybe this is just my expectations, like off of the season they had, that this thing would kind of be an upgraded, well-oiled machine, and it really hasn't been.
No, I think besides the second preseason game where there was some energy in that first, offensive drive, I just haven't liked the energy all the way around in all 3 of these games, to be quite frank. And I thought Saturday it was off to a bad start. But that first drive where the Ravens literally were just running the ball down their throat, that's just not a good feeling when a team is keeping it vanilla and taking you to task. And you and I have talked about this. Last year, it seemed like they kind of swarmed to the ball. There was a little bit more energy all the way around. I just haven't felt that this preseason. And once again, I don't know how much stock you put into 2 games where 30-plus players were missing, but you like to see the effort a little bit more than we did in especially those 2 games. It's a little rough, especially when you're going up against 2 franchises that kind of pride themselves in what they do in the Patriots and the Ravens. I know the Patriots haven't been good for a little bit here, but the Ravens, they had no problem being better than you without some starters as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to focus on the good, but that was not a great performance. And again, like a lot of the players who played are going to unfortunately get released, because it was the depth players that played and the starters never went out on the field. And so like I take all that into account, but in this particular case, the Ravens starters didn't play either. It's not like the Patriots game where Drake May and company came out there and played, almost a quarter, and we had all of our backups, and you could find some kind of excuse for why things kind of went and looked the way they did. I wouldn't overlook at the time the bazillion penalties that they had, the turnovers that they had. Like it was all, but this one was mano a mano. One team seemed to be taking this, like semi-seriously. And it was disappointing the way that they played. I know that those guys that were on the field aren't the guys who are going to be out there on the field for the Giants game, but it was telling to me. And I just so I'm hoping that like it is a mirage. Don't believe what you see, but I'm with you. I didn't love what happened throughout the summer really, but like they got a chance to flip it around. And we haven't seen Jaden and company do anything yet. I mean, they're on the field for 4 plays. So we haven't seen them do anything yet. So it's very hard to really know what we're going to get when they play the Giants.
Yeah, it's very much a like, how much stock do we really put into, those players playing and the energy heading into the season? Guess what? Now they have 2 weeks of practice. Like we have no idea what the energy is going to be like between now and when they step out on the field, in 2 Sundays against the Giants. Like that's what I'm saying. I think you have to observe it. You have to mention it, but like, how much stock are you putting into it? I'm not putting a ton of stock into it. I will just say it's very much a little bit of, I'm not mad. I'm just a little disappointed. I think that's where I've landed with this preseason and how we've seen it kind of shake out.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, like I've been talking about this for a couple of weeks, just off of what I've seen out there. I'm like, I think really mainly because they just haven't had the whole unit out there on offense, that I'm worried about a slow start. And like Cliff Kingsbury was kind of signaling that like a week ago, like we need to get our guys back on the field. We need to start practicing together. Like we need to, and so I've been worried that there would be a slow start. Hopefully there just isn't, but I guess we'll just see what happens. To leave the Ravens game in the background, there are a few things I want to just kind of point out. Brandon Coleman did ask to play. He was among those that was not going to dress, but because he had missed so much time, during the preseason. And because he had missed time, last year, he said he asked to go. And so they let him go. I thought that was a very good sign. One that he wants to try to get up to speed. This is a new position again for him. He's moving inside. He got dinged up. He didn't practice very much through the last few weeks. So I thought that was a pretty, that one I liked, like when I saw him out there, I was surprised. But that one I liked when I found out afterwards, he went to the coaches and said he wanted to play.
No, I mean, that tells you somebody that actually is, self-assessing themselves and knows that they needed a little bit more reps, and that the coaches agreed that they thought that he could use, a couple more reps too. I love to see that. That's the type of energy that I've been wanting, for the entire training camp and preseason.
Yeah. I will mention this, that pregame, both Noah Brown and Marcus Mariota were working out. That's very good signs for both of them. Dan Quinn said at his last press conference before the game that Noah Brown, he described it as the arrows pointing up for him. Believe it's a knee injury. They don't have to be very specific in the preseason about what's wrong with players. We know how his season ended last year. It was a very serious internal injury that he had. They kind of need him. I mean, like, if you're watching what's happening with all the receivers, like, they kind of need him, especially if we're still up in the air with 17 and what he's going to do. So I've been waiting for, when is he going to kind of ramp back up? And I've seen him work out on the side on the field, but he hasn't worked, hasn't practiced with the team yet in a while. And so I thought that was a really good sign. And then I'll get to the quarterback play in a minute, but like, I'm starting to get really concerned about Mariota. He hadn't practiced in a while, but then on Thursday, he was out there with them, not in any of the live practice stuff, but at least was back out on the field and doing individual drills. And then in pregame, he was working out as well. They called it a lower leg strain. He called it Achilles tendonitis. They're going to be very, very careful with something like that, especially this time of year. You do not want to push anything too hard and then all of a sudden have a season-ending injury. So they're going to be very careful with him. And considering, what we've seen from the other two that are on the team, man, do they need him, to be available. Hopefully you don't have to use him. Jaden's fine, but he has to miss a play, miss a series, whatever it is. You want your backup quarterback to have to go in there. And so that was a good sign that he was part of pregame as well.
No, I think it's, the ship will go down if Jaden goes down, but we also know that if the Commanders are playing a bad team, Mariota can very well step in and beat said bad team. Like, I go back to that Carolina game last year where they only had Jaden for a drive and then he had the rib injury and they were perfectly fine with them. I said one of my favorite parts about last year was they could beat the bad teams pretty easily, which is something we've been waiting for a long time here. But Mariota does factor in there too, that just in case he goes down, you can still, keep the ship afloat. I don't think they're beating the Chiefs with Mariota, but they could beat some of the, the other bad teams. As far as Noah Brown goes too, I'm with you. All of a sudden, he's just, as every day has gone by that Terry hasn't signed, his role has grown more and more important. We saw how good he could be last year, and then he had the injury, and that's just a name that I don't think we all anticipated it being this important, but now we're in a situation where if the Terry stuff doesn't get worked out, all of a sudden he is your number two. So this is one that, we've been kind of eyeing the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. Like it all feels like I'm always like, let's get raring to go. And it's all added up through the summer of not feeling that way. And so hopefully, hopefully it is a bit of a mirage and they are ready to go, but we're not going to know until we know. And it does feel different starting this season than it did a year ago. Now, granted, last year, there's no expectations, just whole new roster, but there were a lot of really good vibes that were going on. And I'm sitting there watching them practice, and I just kind of walked out of it going, no one's going to believe me, but I'm going to tell you, I think they're going to be a little bit better than what people think they're going to be. I didn't envision 12-5, but I'm like, they're going to be a little bit better than people think. This summer just has not gone in a way that would inspire we're going to jump back on that train and be 12-5 again. But, when you have a quarterback like the one that we have now, I guess anything is really possible. And I don't want to be dismissive of the preseason, but I'm hoping to be, because it really wasn't. It just, the overall showing, especially in the games, was not particularly great from the depth players. The quarterback play was like poor. Like this past weekend, Sam Hartman has had a really rough summer. I mean, it's showing up in camp too, but the pick six was a really bad throw. Fumble was unfortunate. He had another interception. He's had a pick in every preseason game. It's been a really, really rough summer for him. Josh Johnson, I think, was leading the race coming into it, but the picks that he threw in the last couple of games, I saw Sam Howell was traded to Philadelphia. I do wonder, is Washington interested in a third string quarterback now off of what's happened over the summer?
Yeah, I would say this too. Like Johnson seemed okay, and then all of a sudden it was, a reminder of probably why he's been, on a million teams lately. And, this does go all the way to if you're down to your third string quarterback, things are probably dire anyways. So I don't know like how much stock you put into this, but I'm with you. I'd almost want to grab someone off the veteran scrap heap. Like you even saw Carson Wentz, get signed after, Howell was traded. So if there's a veteran out there, I would say just go ahead and do it. But at the same time, I'm always a realist. If you are relying on that player on your roster, things have hit a pretty bad point anyway. So it's like, how much do you want to concern it? I will say, I don't really trust either of those guys to keep the ship afloat at this point anyway. So you might as well try to roll the dice on someone.
Yeah, I'm with you. If you're down to the third string, I don't care what team you are, the third string quarterback, you're in trouble. But like the reality is for these guys right now, if Mariota isn't going to be healthy, and it looks like it's going the right way, but if he's not, you need somebody just to be the backup, even if it's for a couple of weeks on the just in case. And, because I don't want to think, I never want to think about an injury especially to Jaden, but like you got to have a fail safe. And this was not inspiring the way that they played throughout the summer. So I think they got to think about it. As far as the running backs go, thought Chris Rodriguez took advantage of his opportunities again. He got quote unquote, the start. And he had 5 or 6 carries. He had a really nice average on it, running very hard. He had told us this story last week that he was working on conditioning, getting his body in shape, getting his speed up. He worked with a speed coach. He said last year he had gotten up to 20 miles per hour like a few times, and he said he's done it multiple times in the summer. So he's kind of reworked his body. I think because of his play, they felt, probably more comfortable making the move they did with Brian Robinson. I would not go so far as to believe that he's still going to have a very prominent role immediately for the team. I still think that kind of belongs in the hands of Austin Eckler and Bill to whatever degree. I'm not totally clear on that yet, and maybe that should be unclear, that we shouldn't really know how they plan to utilize him. But I do think Rodriguez has shown now that, especially in short yardage or potentially popping off a run or two here, I think they could try to rely on him. So I think he's earned himself the opportunity to not only make the team, but get some opportunities along the way.
No, I think this plays into exactly what we kind of thought with Bill. Like, I think they love Bill. I think everybody loves Bill, but at the same time, he's a rookie running back. How much are you going to, have him shoulder the load at the beginning? I think we all know that's not really realistic, for him to do. And I think this is a purely running back by committee type team at this moment in time to start the season out. You and I both said we both love Eckler, that it's almost like a overlook for a lot of people when it comes to Eckler. And so he's going to be, I think, the star back, to start the season out, complimented by C-Rod. But I'm telling you what, this happened a few times last year where C-Rod was the best running back, at the time, and they just left him in there. Like that Cardinals game comes to mind. A couple other moments where they just said, oh, he's the hot hand. We're going to let it ride. So, yeah, I think they're all going to have their moments. But Rodriguez, I'm not like, putting him on a lower pedestal than the other two, honestly. I think they're all basically, a quote-unquote starter at this moment in time.
Yeah, I think like it was so funny last week when everyone was kind of when the B-Rob stuff came up, and I'm like, they keep talking about Bill number 1, draft him really high in your fantasy draft, and I'm like, y'all forgot Austin Eckler's on this team. Like, he's the starter. Like, he's the one they're going to rely on early here. We'll find out how much of a role Bill has, but I think Chris Rodriguez I would assume is going to play, but I'm not going to go, too bonkers about like, well, now all of a sudden he's a starting running back. I kind of don't see it that way. So we'll see how it plays out.
The other side with this running back situation too, and I think it's, they're probably going to have to start tooling around with this, is go look at Eckler's stats. He had 650-ish yards rushing and 650-ish yards, or not 650, 350-ish yards rushing and 350-ish yards passing. I think with the way the wide receivers are going too, I think you're going to see Eckler on the field at the same time as some of these, as Chris Rodriguez or Bill, because I think if you're Kingsbury, you're trying to figure out how I get the pass game going with kind of a lackluster wide receiver core at this moment in time. So the way I look at it too is like, you might have some cases where they're both out on the field and Eckler is the safety valve for Jaden because he can catch the ball. And he was very effective at, taking the ball and running with it yesterday or last year as well. So I've kind of come to that conclusion too, that Eckler might be relied upon in the air a little bit more.
Kingsbury's really earning his money this year.
Yes.
Like he's been handed an interesting hand, this summer. And you could feel, I don't know if frustration is the right word, but you could feel I need to say something about this, a week and a half ago when he basically pointed out like, hey, my guys aren't on the field. We need to start practicing here. I get one of them is a contractual situation and the rest are injuries. I can't, what are you going to say? It's injuries, injuries are injuries. You can't like force people to come back faster, but you could feel the urgency in him where he's going, hey, look, we got high expectations over here. I know we got this incredible quarterback. I believe in this group we have, but this group isn't practicing together. And so he's really going to earn his money here. First month of the season for sure, to try to figure out what works for them when they haven't practiced much together. So I think it's going to be very interesting. As kind of predicted here, Luke McCaffrey was targeted multiple times. And I kind of read it as a couple of things. One, they wanted to give him opportunities. They wanted to see what he could do. When he was getting a lot of heat last week after the last game where I don't think he was targeted in the game, when I rewatched it and I'm like, listen, he is subject to getting the opportunity to make the play. Like, it's not his fault they didn't throw it to him, so you got to be careful about calling him whatever you want to call him. If you don't give him the opportunity to make the play, that's not his fault. And in rewatching, there were plenty of moments where the ball just didn't go his way. And so I think this was a couple of things. One, confidence for him. One, we do like you. We want to give you the ball. We want to see what you can do with it. Two, go out and do it. We want to see, because you haven't had a lot of opportunities, and we are probably going to rely on you a little bit, especially early in the season. Go out and do it. And three, they'll never say this, and this is just my opinion. I think they wanted to shut some of the fan base up about him a little bit, because I thought it got a little too noisy last week about people calling him this and calling him that and saying all these things. And I'm like, he hasn't performed that poorly. I don't think he's going to turn into Jerry Rice. Okay. So let's all be real about this. But that said, I don't think he's a bad player. I think he's a valuable player on the team. I think he contributes in many different ways. And I really kind of hoped that what happened over the weekend was just relax a little bit, give this guy a break. And he's doing everything they're asking him to do. I think everybody needs to chill out on him a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with you. The noise is a little bit too much for him. And, even people throw around the word bust. I'm like, he was a mid-round pick. There's actually really no such thing. There's no such thing as a bust. That bothered me. I really didn't like that at all. That one bothered me. Because he's not what did you think he's going to become? When he's the number 100, but you think he's Tyreek Hill? What did you think he was going to become? Three, the guy does everything he's asked to do. He's a willing participant in every single way. They had him play multiple positions last year. He's on special teams. I also don't think he's going to end up becoming a top tier number one receiver in the NFL. That doesn't mean he doesn't have a valuable role on the team, that's why I thought the noise got a little too much for me to take last week on him. Yeah, and at the same time as well, you actually don't have any idea, what he could look like with this offense, because Jaden spreads the ball around. If there's anything that we've learned with number 5, it's that everyone gets a chance. And so we haven't even seen what he looks like with the other, top receivers on the field at the same time. We saw it a few times last year where he caught a couple of good balls and they had a couple of plays designed for him as well. I think the noise is overblown on him. I'm not worried about him at all. He'll still make the team. He should be on the roster. I think it's weird that he became a little bit of a target of the fan base.
Yeah, I thought that was a little much. He had 0 targets the week before, and obviously Terry's not out there. Noah's not out there. He's getting opportunities. But that was my takeaway was, well, they have to throw him the ball. If you want to see what he can do, he has to get the opportunities. He didn't get the opportunities. He didn't do anything wrong. So that's why I was hey, everybody, chill out here. This has gotten real noisy on him. I do agree that in the absence of McLaurin and Brown, one of the concerns is who's the receiver that stepped up and said, all right, throw me the ball then. And I don't think we saw a lot of that. And so I think that that's a fair thing to ask of the team. Over the next day or two, Are they going to pick up a receiver or two? That wouldn't surprise me, because there was opportunities for players to jump up and say, well, if they're not going to be here, you can rely on me to make the plays. And we didn't see a lot of that from anybody, Luke included. We didn't see that from anybody. So I think that's a fair ask, fair criticism, and a fair curiosity. If those two aren't available early, who is going to be the guy that Jaden can rely on?
I mean, I will say there's a tinge of Jalen Lane. I mean, I think he at least got a little bit better in each game. So I would say that. But at the same time, not unlike McCaffrey.
Luke played and he didn't. I think it's very telling that they did not play him on Saturday. It's like they've seen enough from him.
Right. And that's where like I kind of landed like, oh, there must be like they must feel pretty comfortable with him. At the same time, though, it's kind of like McCaffrey. You got to be realistic. He's still a rookie mid-round pick. And he's also going to be playing special teams. He's going to be, their primary returner. So that's one where I think maybe it could be him, but I also know, not unlike Bill, they're not going to throw too much on his plate all at once here. So, I'm with you. They not only had a mix of young guys and veterans, no one really stepped up and snagged that spot. Right. But I think if there is somebody that I think you're keeping an eye on, it is Jalen Lane, at least in my opinion.
One more person from over the weekend. I was very happy to see Jordan Magee play a little bit with the starters, not a lot, but he has missed so much time. They are so high on him. They really believe that he's going to be a really great player for them. Last year, his summer got derailed with injuries. He did play during the season, but it was kind of up and down. This offseason, everything was going swimmingly until we got to the summer. He got dinged up again. Listen, with Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu out there, I don't know how much time he was going to spend on the field anyway, but they have said that they do intend to play more 3 linebacker sets this year, which I believe includes him. So that was a very good sign to see him on the field as well, because I think their intention is if he's healthy, he'd play more than I think people think he would.
I think so too. And I thought this was interesting that Dan Quinn even said, like, went out of his way to be like, he's such a good linebacker. Like, you actually don't hear him kind of praise players like that, like, I don't know, after a game, but he went out of his way to make sure to kind of say that he loves Jordan Magee and that he is a good player. And I don't know, that just kind of told me he was almost saying to media and the fan base, we really like this guy. He might be banged up, but we really like what we've seen so far. And I think if you're Magee, you take that praise and you bottle it up, because they don't do that often with a lot of players. Told me how much they actually do really, really like him. So glad that he was back out on the field here, and he flashed just a little bit in that first game.
All right, well, let's take the temperature if we're ready to turn the page after what was not a great summer, especially results on the field next. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Are you ready to turn the page? We have to ask the big question this year, which, I think it's asked every year, but I think really matters this year. Is it just the preseason? Do you just look at it and go, it's just the preseason. The records don't matter. The scores actually don't matter. Everybody's got different priorities when they go into the games. The games get weird. And I subscribe most of the time to that, where win or lose, it's not that big of a deal. But to me, it's always about how you play. And I didn't love it, and I don't think anybody could be, I think if you're being realistic about it, I don't think you can walk out of specifically the Patriots or the Ravens games and go that they played collectively very well. And I know it's all the depth players, and I know a lot of these guys are going to get released in the next day or so, but it's never a great sign. And so, where are you? Are you ready to just go, it's the preseason, I don't care, we'll see what happens?
I wouldn't say I wouldn't care. I would just say I've landed on this all summer. How much stock am I really putting into it? And for me, it's not much. That 30 plus players didn't play in 2 of the 3 preseason games. That's an incomplete grade for me. Would I like to see more energy from the back 20 players on the roster? Sure. If that didn't happen, is it make or break to the season? Absolutely not. Like, we all kind of know that as long as Jaden plays, there's a shot every single Sunday, every single, day that they play a game that they could win. And so, yeah, I'm ready to turn the page at this point, mainly because I just know this team has way more they can give, and way more they can give on the energy side of things. I'm trying to just not really take this stock and turn it into week 1 with the Giants, because I do think it's going to be a little bit different. And I do like that there's this 2-week buffer before that game. They do get to turn the page in their own heads, in Ashburn, all of that. and we'll see what happens there. But yes, I am absolutely ready to just turn the page off of this summer. It was not great.
There is one thing that I keep going back to, though, when I think about how the depth players collectively kind of played here, with some exceptions. There were a few guys that really stood out, but with some exceptions. When we came into the summer, this is unusual, second year where they flipped the roster over, there really wasn't a lot of competitive spots. And it was very obvious, like when we walked into camp. And I wonder if that permeated throughout the roster, that there were a lot of guys on the team that were like, what am I fighting for here? It's going to take an injury for something for me to even be open. 48 of the 53 spots, I could have told you what they were going to be before camp started. And, not that I think you need to gin it up to try to juice up the camp. It really shouldn't have to be that way. But there is a part of me that feels like watching all of these backups, like they're fighting for what exactly? And everyone will tell them you're fighting for film for every team, not just this team. And what's stopping you from taking a job and surprising the coaches? I buy in and subscribe to all of that stuff. But I do believe that this camp is really about the group that they kind of knew they were going into the season with. And it was about refinement. And what got me concerned is the Terry thing. There's a lot of injuries. They haven't been practicing, at least on offense. They haven't been practicing together very much. So I haven't seen a lot of it. You felt a little bit of the frustration from Kingsbury. And then you see these results on the field and you go, it feels like some of these guys just knew what the score was before the game ever started. And that permeated down a little bit. Maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's definitely a slice of that. I think New England was a perfect example of that because I've never seen Quinn so mad after a game about, the energy of the team. And that was one that was bad. I think that was a microcosm of how the entire training camp went was, all these starters are going to play. Well, that's just going to be the energy then. And that was bad. And I get it. The Patriots played their starters. But once again, I still go with energy that, players weren't swarming to the ball, that the players that weren't playing weren't as engaged, watching the game either. That was something that happened last year that I think we all really, really liked. And that just didn't happen. I'll just say this. I think the energy was weird. That's all. Like the energy was weird is how I kind of just take this away. The thing is, I also know they could step out on the field, 2 Sundays from now from the Giants and Jaden, throws a bomb to Debo and everyone's going to forget about everything that's happened over the last month, essentially, right?
That's the interesting part of this whole summer was the little glimpse we got of the starters or whatever we got of them. It took them 4 plays to score a touchdown.
Didn't throw a pass.
And then the first team defense, came out on the field. And if it wasn't for Luvu jumping off sides, might have got a big stop, to start with. So I think I walked out on Monday night going, I'm reassured by this, all in a small subset that when the guys we expect to count on are out there, they're ready to go. And they were shot out of a cannon, but we saw a very small slice of it. And everything else either is indicative of the depth still needs to be worked on this team. One of that could be part of it. 2, there wasn't really a competition for a lot of those players, and they knew it. Okay. And they knew it. 3, do we need to feel the vibes of a year ago because this is a different year? And all of those things felt a little bit off this summer. But if you want to take that small little subset of when they put on the jerseys, went on the field, played the Bengals, played their first team, it felt like for 10 minutes, everything was fine. And so that's the part I need to hang on to. If we're going to turn the page, you got to hang on to this that oh yeah, by the way, we still have number 5 and all these other players. And oh, by the way, they've barely played in the preseason. But when they did, everything looked okay, didn't it? So, let's see what happens in 13 days.
Well, and on that 1 touchdown drive, I just joked, they didn't have to throw a pass, right? Well, the most unsexy upgrades you make that impact you the most are what? The offensive line. And the offensive line got praise all across the board on that first, that first half of football, not just the first drive, but that first half of football with the way that they ran things. Look, if that's what we're going to be relying on here in the first month of the season on the offensive line, I'm all right with that. They were not just good. They dominated. And I get it. The Bengals defense isn't great, but that's still a starting caliber, defense that was playing their starters there and you dominated them. And that was a little bit of a position where you were kind of asking the questions on whether they were going to be good or not. And they still didn't have Tunsil too. So at the same time, like, I still think you take away from when those starters did play and what you can carry over into the regular season. That's why it's just a mixed bag for me. You just didn't get a long look at all of this. So you have to keep kind of looking into that first half.
The competition for the depth just wasn't there. They probably knew it. And maybe that the roster isn't quite there yet. This is only off season 2 for Adam Peters and company. They're still working on that. Like, they don't have the Eagles roster yet. They don't have the Ravens roster yet, for that matter. I think that was readily apparent on Saturday. Like, look at the depth on that team. They, by the way, are my from the AFC Super Bowl pick. Like, and not because of what happened on Saturday, obviously not because of what happened on Saturday, but like just across the board, it just feels like it's their time. Like, they've just got this massive roster that's walking out there this year. We don't necessarily have that. Now, we have a really, really, really good team, I think, when we get out there. I haven't seen a lot of it this summer, but like, I think we do. But from a top to bottom 53, I don't think we're quite there yet. And I think if they're being honest, they would tell you that too.
And I think, I think it's a good reminder for fans of, because you forget about it in the big picture of things, is Adam Peters loved to retool the bottom of the roster last year. It's something that the previous regime didn't do. I would say this, like, everyone was going, oh, well, 20 of these guys aren't going to be here on Tuesday. It could be more than that because they bring guys in, to be quite honest. And Peters has done that before. And like, I think it's a good reminder of, look at what happened, in that first month of the season. Remember, Emmanuel Forbes and Jamin Davis were on the roster. They were gone by the first, month or two of the year, right? Like, they were retooling the bottom of the roster. This is always a work in progress here too. So like, don't set it in stone at whatever happens tomorrow at 4:00. They're going to keep retooling. They always have. And so that's another part of this where you see who else, hits the waiver wire, and they're players for all of those.
I am curious about potential moves today. Do they try to get a quarterback today based on what happened? I think some of that will be, how good do we feel about Mariota going into the season? Do we feel like we need to do something because we're unsure of his availability early in the season? If they feel pretty good about it, maybe they don't make a move. Maybe they watch the cuts. Maybe they see what happens. The other one is wide receiver. I really think that, like, at this point, not knowing how the Terry thing is going to end up playing out over the next couple of weeks, Noah Brown is trending up and on his way back, but has barely practiced. And everyone else, we haven't had really anybody step up. And I think that's been frustrating for them, that nobody's taken the bull by the horns and gone, throw me the ball. I'm watching that position very closely. If the right person is available over the next 24 hours, either via trade or obviously after a cut, I'm watching Washington very, very closely here. I think they're going to be in the market for a wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one that happened last year too, right? They got Noah Brown off of the waiver wire, didn't have to trade for him as well. I 100% think there's going to be at least one more veteran brought in. Also because the veterans here didn't really step up. I think it's actually not about McCaffrey or Jalen Lane not stepping up. I think it was about the couple of veterans that they brought in that we thought, oh, those guys should be able to make some noise. And in fact, we haven't heard anything really from them throughout any of the games where they got significant playing time. So I think, all those guys are in jeopardy because another veteran could come in and probably overtake some spots.
I don't know if you heard this, but Demarcus Lawrence went on the pivot. Have you seen this clip yet? He went on the pivot with Ryan Clark and said he was offered to come here in the offseason and turned it down because he thinks the team they don't need him, that they're too good, and that he wasn't just going to go anywhere just to be part of a Super Bowl team. And I guess that's why he went to Seattle, which if I were Seattle and heard that and I went, wait a minute, you turned down the opportunity to go to a team that you thought could win the Super Bowl because you'd rather just be on a different team that you clearly don't think can go to the Super Bowl. That doesn't sound good, but I will take the compliment of he thinks that's where we're heading this year.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is the deal was not as good, and that's what he was trying to get at. That's what I kind of heard in that. Like,
well, I think we offered him a 1-year deal and Seattle gave him 3. So just be honest, DeMarcus, you took the security and the money, and no one is going to blame you for that.
Exactly, because that's what I was like. that doesn't make sense. You would have just signed here if you thought we were too good. So the deal was clearly better in Seattle, which sounds about right. Seattle gave him that 3-year deal. I don't think we were in the market for doing that. So yeah, I'm with you. Like, it's kind of like a backhanded compliment. It's like, oh, so it wasn't good enough to sign the 1-year deal. Fine. Like, I'm not going to knock you for that, but thanks, I guess, is what I'll say to that.
One other one, the Eagles made a slew of trades yesterday. A couple of tackles, one going, one returning, an ex-player, Fred Johnson, who used to be on their team. And because of a Tanner McKee injury, and I guess they don't love Dorian Thompson-Robinson, they let him go. They traded for Sam Howell. Our boy Sam Howell is back there. I was surprised, mainly because, listen, Sam went to Seattle, and Seattle was a new coaching staff and defensive coaching staff. He was in Minnesota. That's KOC. KOC decided he doesn't want him anymore. That's not great. So it'll be, I hope we play him. The way I put it, nothing against Jalen. I hope he's fine. I don't root for injuries, but I do hope we play him.
I mean, to be fair, like, Sam and Jalen Hurts' skill set are a little similar, right? Like, Sam does like to run around a little bit and then just try to air it out where he can. I see the correlation there. I did not think he was a KOC type quarterback. So
no,
I see why the Eagles, if he's a third stringer, why you take a shot at him. But like, I'm with you. He's teetering on the edge there of his NFL career. Fourth team in what? That's his fourth team in 16 months, right? Because he got traded from here to Seattle, then Minnesota, now Eagles.
Yeah.
You kind of know the writing's on the wall at that point.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we'll take a quick break. Brave Boston Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Time to join everybody's thought piece time on Shedeur Sanders after he had an unusual end to his preseason career where, unlike the first appearance, he didn't play in the second game because of injury. First game, he actually looked pretty good, competent, had some nice moments, threw a couple touchdowns. This third game, he was like, threw for 14 yards, was sacked 5 times, took a preposterous one. And then Cleveland made an unusual decision late in the game where they pulled him, where they were in the middle of a 2-minute drill and put Tyler Huntley in. Tyler Huntley got cut, the next day because they have 5 quarterbacks on their roster and they're openly talking about keeping 4. I don't know how they're going to do that, and I don't know why they would do that, but like that's what they've decided. Flacco's definitively their starter. I feel like Pickett ought to get moved, because like you're not cutting both Gabriel and Sanders. Like that's absurd. So, and then everybody, of course, has to have a think piece about Shedeur and tell everybody they're setting him up to fail, of which is so crazy that why would they draft somebody to set him up to fail? How does that help them? Who would that benefit? Why would you say something like that? They're not. How about maybe I don't love the way they handled that the other day either. I think that's open. It's an open question to go, why didn't you give him a 2-minute drill? Like what, like you just cut this guy. Why wouldn't you let him do it? Like we don't understand that. But the idea that the Browns drafted him to make him look bad is one of the dumbest conspiracy theories I've ever heard in my life.
Right. And it's also like, he is a 5th-round pick. Temper your expectations on that.
Yes.
Like, there's a reason why he was picked there. And you can have all the conspiracy theories in the world of why he was picked in the 5th round. I'll hear you out on that. But at the end of the day, a 5th-round pick isn't coddled or, isn't handed the starting gig. So I don't really know what people want from this other than that his last name is Sanders and that it comes with all the stuff that it came with drafting him. On the 2-minute drill thing, I got no idea on that one. And then they cut Huntley anyways. So I don't know. Maybe that was a like, hey, we appreciate you. Here's some game tape. That's the only thing I could think of there. But at the same time, wouldn't you want to give that opportunity to Sanders? I don't know. It's the Browns, man. Like I have no idea what they were doing at that point. But to say that they're trying to fail Shedeur is ridiculous. And when it comes to the 4 quarterbacks thing, I think it just settles in on this. You've got Flacco and Pickett who are veterans. Then you got 2 rookies. If Flacco goes down, I think they just want a veteran and Pickett just in case. That's the only thing I can think of is if the other 2 can't run the offense to even like look competent out there. That's all.
I don't know. If I'm the front office, I'm like, if Flacco goes down, you're playing one of these other two. You choose who it is, but you're playing one of the other two. Because why did we draft them both then? Like,
Fair.
put them out there. And you're like, we're not going to judge you on it if they play poorly, but like, put them out there. Last one, Micah Parsons is caught. You think the Terry thing was a bad visual? Him looking like he was taking a nap on a training table in the middle of a preseason game. You could spin that all you want. That looks awful. I mean, really, really, really. And granted, theirs is way more publicly acrimonious because Jerry doesn't mind the smoke. He likes it. He likes he doesn't care. If you watch this America's Team documentary, he talks about it. He does not mind the negative attention to it. In fact, he likes it. So it didn't bother him at all. And it's clearly bothering Micah Parsons because you don't act that way if it's not bothering you.
Yeah, I mean, I love the term emo Terry, but I also love checked out Parsons because those screenshots were hilarious. Him not just laying on a training table, sprawled out on the training table. Like you've got kids. You know, when kids aren't engaged in the sport that they're playing, they just do whatever they want on the field. That was Parsons, like just sprawling out like that. I couldn't kind of believe the visuals on that. It's one thing if you're Terry and you're kind of just trying to be a lone wolf on the sidelines. It's another one where you're Parsons just not having a care in the world. Good luck with that. The visuals on that are amazing.
Yeah, I mean, every loss they take, that picture will be used.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
that's going to be the picture that everyone uses to describe whenever they lose any game this year. I'm hoping our offense is just fine because emo Terry might show up in some of those this year too if the offense doesn't look so great.
Right.
So we'll see. All right, cut down day tomorrow. We'll get into all that then. Bram wants to show ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.